The Galactic Military Academy on Velthus Prime was the largest military training center in the known universe. Every year, 10,000 young recruits from hundreds of different alien species came here to become soldiers. The academy had been running for 300 years. In all that time, they had made very few mistakes. Today, they made one. Alara Chun was 17 years old. She was short, even by human standards. She stood only 5 feet and 2 inches tall. She weighed about 52 kilograms. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes looked at everything with quiet curiosity. She had traveled for 6 weeks on a transport ship to reach this place. She had dreamed of serving in the galactic military since she was a little girl. Not as a soldier, of course. Humans were not built for combat. Everyone knew that. Alara had applied for the medical support course. She wanted to help people. She wanted to heal wounds and save lives. The orientation packet in her hands confirmed this. It said, Support and Medical Corps Auxiliary Classification in bright blue letters. Her barracks assignment was Training Bay Omega 7, Orientation Group 7. Alara walked through the massive hallways of the academy. Everything was built for creatures much larger than her. The ceilings were 30 feet high. The doors were wide enough for 4 humans to walk through side by side. She felt very small. She found the door marked Omega 7 and pressed her hand to the entry panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. She walked inside, and everything went wrong. The room was huge. It was a combat training facility filled with weapons racks, fighting rings, and holographic target systems. But Alara did not notice any of these things at first. She only noticed the creatures inside. 36 aliens turned to look at her. They were monsters. That was the only word her brain could find. Monsters. The nearest one was a Varrock. It stood 7 feet tall and was covered in dark green scales. Sharp spines grew from its back, each one as long as Alara's forearm. Its eyes were yellow with vertical pupils, like a snake. It looked at her the way a cat looks at a mouse. Behind it stood a Visari. This creature was even taller, with 4 arms and a head that was mostly mouth. Its mandibles clicked together, and Alara could see that its saliva was eating tiny holes in the metal floor where it dripped. There were Crickstole with their compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. There were massive Grothian whose stone-like skin could stop bullets. There were Silith whose bodies were almost invisible, only visible as a shimmer in the air. Every single creature in this room had been selected because their species were natural killers. They came from worlds where only the deadliest survived. They were apex predators, the top of their food chains, and standing in the doorway, holding her little orientation packet, was Alara Chun, a human, a species that the galaxy classified as Persistence Class, which was a polite way of saying not threatening. The room was completely silent. Alara's heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were shaking. Every instinct in her body was screaming at her to run away. These creatures could kill her in 100 different ways without even trying. But Alara had grown up on Earth. She had grown up in a small town where being shy meant being invisible. She had learned, through painful experience, that the best way to handle scary situations was to pretend she was not scared. So she did something that confused everyone in the room. She smiled and waved. "Hi," she said. Her voice only shook a little. "Is this Orientation Group 7? Nobody answered. The predators just stared at her. At the front of the room, a massive Visari stepped forward. This one was different from the recruit. It was older, and its carapace was covered in scars. It wore the insignia of a senior instructor. This was Grathvalum. He had been training predator soldiers for 40 years. He had personally killed 32 enemy combatants in 3 different wars. He had never once been confused by a recruit. Until now. He looked at his datapad. Then he looked at the human. Then he looked at his datapad again. The system clearly stated, Chun, E, assigned to Predator Combat Division, Orientation Group 7. This made no sense. Humans were classified as support species. They were weak, slow, and fragile. They had no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no armor. They could not see in the dark. They could not smell danger. They were, by every measure the Academy used, completely unsuited for Predator combat training. But the system had spoken. And Grathvalum trusted the system. "Take your position," he growled. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Back row." Alara nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." She hurried across the room, very aware of all the eyes following her. She found an empty spot in the back row, between a Varak, whose shoulder spines were inches from her face, and a Crickstil, whose compound eyes tracked her every movement. She stood at attention, just like she had practiced. She tried to control her breathing. She tried to look like she belonged here. The Vorak beside her leaned down. Its breath smelled like meat. "You are in the wrong place, little prey," it whispered. "This is the Predator Division. We eat things like you." Alara swallowed hard. "There must be some mistake," she whispered back. "I'm supposed to be in medical support." The Vorak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Then you should leave, before someone decides to use you for target practice." But Alara could not leave. The door was on the other side of the room. To reach it, she would have to walk past 3 dozen predators. She would have to admit she did not belong. She would have to show weakness. On Earth, showing weakness to predators was how you got eaten. So Alara stayed. She stood at attention. She kept her eyes forward. And she made a decision that would change her life forever. She would not run. At the front of the room, Instructor Grathvalum began the orientation briefing. He explained the training schedule, the combat assessments, the survival exercises. He explained that this was the most difficult program in the Academy. He explained that the dropout rate was 60%. He did not look at Alara when he said these things. He did not need to. Everyone in the room knew that the little human would be gone by tomorrow. Everyone, except Alara. She listened carefully to every word. She memorized the schedule. She noted the important details. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a very human thought began to form. "They think I'm weak," she thought. "They think I'm prey." She remembered something her grandmother had told her once. Back on Earth, her grandmother had been a history teacher. She knew many stories about how humans had survived on their dangerous planet. "Humans are not the strongest," her grandmother had said. "We are not the fastest. But we are the most stubborn creatures ever born. When we decide not to die, the universe has to work very hard to kill us." Alara Chun decided, in that moment, that she was not going to die. She was not going to drop out. She was going to survive this. Somehow, the briefing ended. The recruits were dismissed to their barracks. As Alara walked to her assigned room, she could feel the eyes on her back. She could hear the whispered jokes in alien languages. She ignored them all. Tomorrow would be the first combat assessment. Tomorrow, she would have to demonstrate her predatory capabilities in front of everyone. She had no idea what she was going to do, but she had tonight to figure it out. And humans, she reminded herself, were very good at figuring things out. 3 months passed. Alara survived. It was not easy. Every day pushed her body to its limits. Every training session left her bruised and exhausted. The exercises designed for predator species nearly killed her 12 times. But she adapted. She learned. She found ways to complete tasks that no human should have been able to complete. The other recruits began to notice. Kethris, the senior Vorak recruit who had threatened her on the first day, became something like a friend. He still did not understand her, but he respected her. She had earned that respect through blood and pain and stubborn refusal to quit. The Dasari named Vethka began sitting next to her during meals. Dasari could not eat solid food, so Vethka would dissolve her meals into liquid while Alara ate her strange human rations. They talked about their homeworlds. Vethka found Earth fascinating, a planet where the dominant species had no natural weapons at all. The Krikstal called Zix became her training partner. Zix was the fastest creature Alara had ever seen, but she had trouble with strategy. Alara helped her plan. Zix helped her survive, slowly without anyone noticing. Alara Chun became part of the pack. Then came the field exercise on Kethra. Kethra was a jungle moon. The Academy used it for survival training. The mission was simple. Survive for 72 hours, eliminate simulated enemy targets, and extract as a unit. Standard predator training. The 37 recruits landed in the jungle at dawn. Instructor Grathvalum led them through the thick vegetation, pointing out dangerous plants and animals. The jungle was hot and wet. Strange sounds filled the air. Alara sweated through her uniform within the first hour. 6 hours into the exercise, everything changed. The attack came without warning. Plasma bolts flew through the trees. One of them hit Instructor Grathvalum in the chest. He fell. The recruits scattered, taking cover behind trees and rocks. More plasma fire tore through the jungle. Someone screamed as a bolt found its target. Alara pressed herself against a massive tree root, her heart pounding. This was not a training exercise. These were real weapons, real enemies. She risked a look around the root. She saw figures moving through the trees. They were Nexuri, a species known for piracy and raiding. They were cybernetically enhanced, with metal parts replacing flesh. They carried military-grade weapons. There were at least 60 of them. Contact! Kethris shouted. We have hostile contact. Not a drill. The predators responded as predators do. They attacked. Kethris led 12 recruits in a direct charge. They were fast and fierce and absolutely deadly. They tore through the first line of Nexari like they were made of paper. Then the Nexuri regrouped. They had better weapons. They had better positions. They had numbers. 8 recruits came back from the charge. 12 did not. The survivors retreated to a cave system that Grathvalum had shown them earlier. They dragged their wounded instructor with them. Alara helped carry one of the injured recruits, a young Grothian whose stone skin had been cracked by plasma fire done in the cave. They counted their losses. 12 dead or missing. 7 wounded. Their communications equipment was destroyed. No one was coming to help them. Kethris stood at the cave entrance, his spines rattling with anger. We attack again, he snarled. We are predator class. We do not hide like prey. And we will die, Alara said. Everyone turned to look at her. The human was sitting against the cave wall, checking Instructor Grathval's wound. The plasma bolt had burned through his thorax, but the Sari had redundant organs. He would survive if they could get him to medical care. You suggest we cower, human? Kethris demanded. You suggest we show weakness? I suggest we hunt. The word hung in the air. Hunt, not attack. Not fight, hunt. Explain, Grathvalum rasped. Even wounded, he was paying attention. Alara stood up. She found a patch of soft dirt and began drawing with a stick. They have fortified positions here, and here, she said, marking the map. They have superior numbers and superior weapons. They have already adapted to our assault tactics. A direct attack will fail. Then what do you suggest? Zix asked. We do what humans do. We hunt them. She explained her plan. It was nothing like Predator class doctrine. It was slow and patient. It involved traps, deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. First, We take out their scouts. Not kill them. Capture them. Yeah. We leave them tied up where their friends will find them. We leave messages. We make them scared. Scared? Catharus spat. Warriors do not use fear. Humans do, Alara said calmly. On Earth, we hunted animals much bigger and stronger than us. We could not fight them directly. So we made them tired. We made them confused. We made them afraid. Then, when they were weak, we killed them. She drew more lines on the map. We poisoned their water supply. Vethka, your acid can destroy their purification systems. We sabotage their fuel cells. Catharus, your spine throwing can hit targets from 200 meters. We keep them awake all night with noise and false attacks. Humans did this to our enemies. We called it psychological warfare. This is not honorable, Catharus said, but his voice was less certain now. Honor is a luxury, Alara replied. Dead soldiers have no honor. They are just dead. I want us to live. I want to go home. And I will use every trick my species ever invented to make that happen. The cave was silent. The predators looked at each other. They had been trained to fight directly, to use their natural weapons, to overwhelm enemies with speed and strength. What this human described was completely different. It was hunting. True hunting. The kind of hunting that had made humans the dominant species on a planet that tried very hard to kill them. Instructor. Grathvalum made a sound that might have been a laugh. Do it, he said. Listen to the human. Catharus' spines flattened in surprise. Instructor? I have fought many enemies, Grathvalum said. I know when brute force will work and when it will not. This is not a fight we can win with strength. The human's way might work. He looked at Alara with his compound eyes. Teach them, Chun. Teach them to hunt like humans. Alara nodded. She felt the weight of every eye on her. 24 predators, some of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, were waiting for her orders. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about all the stories of human hunters who had chased mammoths across frozen plains, who would track deer for days without rest, who had worked together in packs, using their brains when their bodies were not enough. Okay, she said. First, I need 2 volunteers to make some noise at their eastern perimeter. 3 more to dig pit traps here, and here. She looked at Vethka. Can the Sari cry on command? Vethka's mandibles clicked in confusion. What? Your tears are acid, yes? I need you to fill some containers with acid tears. We are going to make some surprises for our guests. Slowly, the predators began to move. They did not understand everything, but they were willing to try. Zix approached Alara quietly. Do you really think this will work? She asked. Alara looked out at the jungle. Somewhere out there, 60 Nexari pirates were waiting. They had better weapons, better numbers, better positions, but they did not have 2 million years of human hunting instinct. I do not know, Alara admitted, but I know one thing. Humans do not give up. We are too stubborn to die. She smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found her prey. Now, she said, let us teach these pirates why humans conquered Earth. The long hunt was about to begin. Alara did not sleep that night. She lay in her bunk, which was far too large for her, and she thought. She thought about the assessment tomorrow. She thought about the predators who would be watching. She thought about all the ways she could fail. Then she stopped thinking about failure. That was not helpful. Instead, she thought about success. What did she have? What could she use? She was small. That was usually a weakness, but it can also be an advantage. Small things were hard to hit. Small things could fit into spaces where big things could not go. She was weak. But weakness was relative. She could still lift things. She could still throw things. Humans were actually very good at throwing things. It was one of the few physical abilities where humans excelled. Something about shoulder joints and arm length. She was slow. Compared to a crystal, yes. But she was not slow compared to a rock, or a trap, or a falling object. She was smart. Not the smartest species in the galaxy, but smart enough. Humans had conquered their planet not with strength, but with thinking. They had invented tools and weapons and strategies. Alara smiled in the darkness. She had something none of the predators had. She had spent her entire life being the weakest thing in the room. She had practice at this. The morning came too quickly. The recruits gathered in the assessment chamber, a massive room with high ceilings and reinforced walls. Combat drones hovered near the ceiling, ready to be activated. Training dummies stood in rows, waiting to be destroyed. Instructor Grathvolum stood at the front, his datapad in one of his 4 hands. "Today you will demonstrate your primary predatory capability," he announced. "Each recruit will enter the ring and subdue a combat drone. You will have 60 seconds. This assessment will establish your initial ranking." The recruits began their demonstrations. Alara watched carefully from the back row. The first Vorok stepped into the ring. A combat drone activated and flew toward it. The Vorok did not move. It waited until the drone was close. Then its back spines shot forward like missiles. 3 spines hit the drone perfectly. The drone exploded. Time: 4 seconds. The recruits clicked and growled their approval. The Thesari was next. Its drone activated and flew in a different pattern, trying to avoid direct attack. The Thesari simply spat at it. The acidic saliva hit the drone's hull and began eating through the metal. Within seconds, the drone fell to the ground, dissolving. Time: 7 seconds. Then came the crystal. Her drone activated, and she vanished. That was the only way to describe it. One moment she was standing in the ring. The next moment she was on the other side, holding the disabled drone in her claws. Alara had not even seen her move. Time: 2 seconds. One by one, the predators demonstrated their abilities. Claws that could cut through steel. Venom that could paralyze instantly. Sonic screams that could shatter bone. Each one was more impressive than the last. Then Instructor Grathvolum called her name. "Chun, E-Human, step forward." The room went quiet. Every eye, every compound eye, every heat-sensing pit turned toward her. Alara could hear amused clicks and low growls. They were laughing at her. She walked to the ring. She stepped inside. She faced the drone platform. "Demonstrate your predatory capability," Grathvolum said. There was something in his voice. Not quite mockery. More like curiosity. He wanted to see what she would do. "Could you define the parameters?" Alara asked. Grathvolum's mandibles clicked. "Subdue the combat drone. You have 60 seconds." A drone activated. It rose into the air, its sensors scanning her. It was programmed to evade attacks, to fire stunning gel rounds, to shock anything that got too close. It was designed to test predators who could move faster than the eye could see. Alara could not move faster than the eye could see, but she could think faster. She did not attack. She stood very still and watched the drone. It circled her once, twice, 3 times. It was waiting for her to move. Its programming expected her to attack. Alara noticed things. The drone pulled slightly to the left when it turned. There was a tiny delay between when it targeted and when it fired. The gel rounds came from a port on its front, which meant it had to face her to shoot. She also noticed other things. There was debris on the floor from the previous assessments. A chunk of melted metal from the Thesari's acid. A reflective panel from a destroyed training dummy. The light fixture above the ring was hanging by a thin cable. A plan formed in her mind. It was not elegant. It was not impressive. But it might work. She picked up the chunk of melted metal. The drone immediately targeted her arm. It prepared to fire. Alara threw the metal, not at the drone. At the light fixture. The fixture shattered. Glass and sparks rained down. The room's lighting flickered and dimmed. The drone's optical sensors went crazy. They were designed for consistent lighting. The sudden change confused them. The drone paused for half a second while it recalibrated. Half a second was enough. Alara had already grabbed the reflective panel. She angled it to catch the emergency lights that had activated near the ceiling. She bounced the light directly into the drone's backup sensors. The drone was blind. It could not see her with normal vision or backup systems. It switched to predictive targeting. It calculated where she should be based on her last position. But Alara was not there anymore. She had started running the moment she threw the metal. Not away from the drone. Toward it. While it was blind, while it was confused, she closed the distance. She jumped. Her hands grabbed the drone's hull. She wrapped her arms around it, locked her fingers together, and held on. The drone did not know what to do. Nothing in its programming prepared it for this. Creatures were supposed to attack it, not hug it. It tried to shake her off. Alara held tighter. Her grandmother had always said she was stubborn. Now she proved it. The drone flew higher, trying to scrape her against the ceiling. Alara shifted her weight and threw off its balance. The drone compensated. Alara shifted again. They danced in the air, the machine trying to fly straight, while the human kept making it wobble. It fired gel rounds randomly, trying to hit her. Some of them did. They stung badly. Alara ignored the pain. Pain was just information. It told her body that something was wrong. But her body was wrong about a lot of things. She could hurt later. Right now, she had to win. The drone's power cell was draining fast. Every correction, every compensation, every failed attempt to remove her cost energy. The drone was designed for short, intense combat. It was not designed for a long fight with a creature that simply refused to let go. 40-7 seconds after the assessment began, the drone's power cell died. It fell. Alara fell with it. She hit the ground hard, but she rolled with the impact. Her body hurt everywhere. She was covered in cooling gel from the stun rounds. But she was standing. The drone was not. The assessment chamber was completely silent. Instructor, Grathful's mandibles had frozen mid-click. He stared at the human, at the disabled drone, at the destroyed light fixture. He looked at his datapad. The datapad confirmed what he had seen. Chun, the assessment complete. Time, 47 seconds. Method, unorthodox. The Vorak who had threatened her last night was the first to speak. What? He said slowly. Was that? Alara wiped gel from her eyes. Her arms were shaking. Her legs felt like water. But she managed to smile. Humans call it problem solving, she said. Also, we are really good at throwing things. And not letting go. She did not mention the other things. She did not mention how she had spent the entire wait period studying the room. She did not mention the 6 backup plans she had created in case the first one failed. She did not mention that humans had survived on Earth, not by being the strongest or fastest, but by being the most creative and the most stubborn. The Clerical who had disabled her drone in 2 seconds looked at Alara with new eyes. You broke the light to blind the drone, she said. You used the debris as tools. You turned your weakness into a weapon. I used what I had, Alara said simply. That is what humans do. Instructor Grathful finally spoke. His voice was strange. Not angry. Not amused. Something else. Return to your position, Recruit Chun. Alara walked back to the rear row. Her legs nearly gave out twice, but she made it. She stood at attention between the Vorak and the Clerical. The Vorak looked down at her. Its expression had changed. It was no longer looking at her like prey. "You are strange, human," it said quietly. "I do not understand you." Alara managed a tired smile. "That is okay. Most humans do not understand themselves either." The assessment continued, but something had changed. The predators were no longer laughing at her. They were watching her with curiosity, and Instructor Grathvalum kept looking at his datapad, clicking his mandibles thoughtfully. The clerical error that had placed her here was still a mystery. But for the first time, Grathvalum wondered if it might not be a mistake at all. The first night was about fear. Alara sent 2 teams into the jungle. The first team, led by Kethris, moved silently through the darkness. They found the Nexari scouts one by one. They did not kill them. Killing was too quick, too clean. Instead, they captured them, tied them to trees, and left them where their friends would find them. Each captured scout had a message carved into the tree beside them. The message was in the Nexari trade language. It said only 3 words: "We see you." The second team made noise. They banged rocks together. They screamed in alien languages. They set small fires and put them out. They did this at random times, in random places, all night long. The Nexari could not sleep. Every time they started to relax, another noise would come from the darkness. Another scout would be found tied to a tree. Another message would appear by morning. The pirates were exhausted and paranoid. The second day was about resources. Vethka led a small team to the Nexari water supply. The Sari could move silently when they wanted to. She found the purification systems and spat acid on them. The acid ate through the machines slowly, invisibly. The Nexari would not notice until they tried to use them. Kethris took position on a ridge 200 meters from the enemy camp. His spine throwing was accurate at this distance. He did not aim for the pirates. He aimed for their equipment: fuel cells, communication devices, weapon power packs. One by one, he destroyed them. The Nexari sent patrols to find the attackers. The patrols found pit traps instead. The pits were not deep enough to kill. They were deep enough to injure, deep enough to slow down, deep enough to create more wounded that the enemy had to care for. Alara learned this from Earth history. Injured soldiers cost more resources than dead ones. Dead soldiers were gone. Injured soldiers needed food, water, medicine, and guards. Every injured pirate made the enemy weaker. By the end of the second day, the Nexari had lost 12 more fighters. Not to direct combat, to traps, to accidents, to exhaustion. Their water was contaminated. Their fuel was running low. Their scouts kept disappearing, and they still had not seen their enemy. The third night was about terror. Elara gathered the recruits and explained the next phase. "Humans have a word," she said. "Panic. It means fear so strong that you cannot think. Fear so strong that you do stupid things. We need to make them panic." "How?" Zix asked. Alara smiled. "Fire. On Earth, fire was humanity's oldest weapon. It cooked their food, kept them warm, and protected them from predators. But it was also a weapon of terror. Animals feared fire. Even intelligent beings feared fire when it came without warning. The recruits gathered dry plants and leaves. They made bundles soaked in flammable sap. When darkness fell, they spread out around the enemy camp. At midnight, Alara gave the signal. 20-4 fires ignited at once. They formed a circle around the Nexari camp. The flames climbed high, throwing wild shadows across the jungle. Smoke filled the air. At the same time, every recruit began making noise. They screamed and howled and roared. They banged weapons against trees. They threw rocks into the camp. The noise came from everywhere at once. The Nexari panicked. They fired their weapons blindly into the darkness. They ran from the flames, straight into the traps that had been prepared. They shot at each other in the confusion. Officers screamed orders that no one heard. In the chaos, Alara's team struck. Zix moved through the smoke like a ghost. She was too fast to see, too quick to stop. She disabled weapons and knocked pirates unconscious before they knew she was there. Kethris and his Vorak charged through the eastern perimeter. The pirates there had abandoned their positions to escape the fire. They met Vorak's spines instead. Vethka led a team to the enemy command center. Her acid melted through the door. Inside, the Nexari leaders were trying to coordinate their forces. They never got the chance. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 32 Nexari were captured. 18 were dead. The rest fled to their ship and lifted off, sending terrified warnings across all channels about the demons of Kethra. The recruits gathered in the smoking ruins of the enemy camp. They were wounded, exhausted, and covered in ash. But they were alive. They had won. Kethris approached Alara. His spines were flat against his back in the posture, his species used for respected pack members. His eyes were different now. He no longer looked at her as prey, or even as a strange creature he could not understand. He looked at her as an equal. "I was wrong about you, human," he said. Alara shrugged. Her arms were shaking with exhaustion. Her throat was raw from the smoke. But she managed a small smile. "You were not wrong," she said. "I am not an apex predator. I never will be. Then what are you?" She thought about this. She thought about her ancestors on the African savanna, working together to bring down animals 10 times their size. She thought about the wolves they had befriended, turning wild hunters into loyal companions. She thought about horses and cattle and all the other animals humans had tamed. "Humans are coordinators," she said finally. "We are okay at many things, but we are not the best at anything. What we are best at is making others work together, finding how everyone's strengths fit together." She gestured at the recruits around them. "I could not have done any of this alone. Vethka's acid destroyed their supplies. Kethris' spines provided precision strikes. Zix's speed let us move without being seen. The Grothian tanked hits that would have killed anyone else. Everyone contributed something." Zix tilted her head, considering this. "You made us better," she said slowly. "You made us work together in ways we never learned." "That is what humans do," Alara said. "On our world, we were never the strongest or fastest. So we learned to make packs. Not packs of humans only. Packs of everything useful. We tamed wolves and used their senses. We tamed horses and used their speed. We built tools to do what our bodies could not." She looked around at the predators surrounding her. "You are all amazing hunters on your own. But together, with someone to coordinate, you are unstoppable." From the edge of the group, Instructor Grathvalum made a sound of agreement. He had been carried from the cave to witness the final battle. He was too weak to fight, but he had watched everything. 200 years, he said, his voice rough with pain and smoke. "The Academy has trained soldiers for 200 years. We classified humans as support species. Persistence class. We never understood." He looked at Alara. "You are not apex predators. You never were. You are something we do not have a classification for." "What do you mean?" Alara asked. "You make predators better," Grathvalum said. "You see strengths we do not see in ourselves. You find ways to combine different abilities. You turn a group of individual hunters into a coordinated pack." His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The clerical error that placed you in this class was a mistake. But it was also the best accident the Academy has ever made." Alara did not know what to say to that. She was tired. She wanted to sleep for a week. She wanted to go home and tell her grandmother about everything that had happened. But she also felt something else. Pride. Not in herself alone, but in what they had accomplished together 20-4 predators from a dozen different species had fought as one unit. They had used each other's strengths. They had covered each other's weaknesses. They had won a battle that should have been impossible, and it had all started with a small human girl who refused to give up. Kethris extended his clawed hand. It was a human gesture he had learned from watching her. "Pack," he said simply. Alara took his hand. His claws were careful not to cut her. "Pack," she agreed. Around them, the other recruits gathered closer. They did not fully understand what had changed, but they knew something important had happened. They were no longer 37 individual predators. They were a pack. And their pack had a coordinator, a small, stubborn, creative human who had turned their weaknesses into strengths and their differences into advantages. The rescue ships arrived. 3 hours later, the Academy commanders listened to the reports with disbelief. They watched the combat recordings multiple times. They questioned every survivor dot when they were done. They looked at each other with the same thought. Something had to change. 6 months after the clerical era that changed everything, Alara Chun stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Military Academy. The hall was enormous. It could hold 10,000 beings. Today, it held the entire graduating class of the Predator Combat Division, their families, academy staff, and military officials from dozens of worlds. Floating cameras broadcast the ceremony across the galaxy. Alara stood at attention in the front row. She was still the smallest person in the room. She was still human, but she no longer looked out of place. The commandant of the academy stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall. She was an ancient crystal named Verthex, whose compound eyes had witnessed 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. She had commanded fleets. She had defended entire star systems. She was a legend dot, and right now, she was reading Alara's file. "Cadet Chun," the commandant said. Her voice carried through the hall without amplification. "Please step forward." Alara walked to the platform. Her boots clicked on the polished floor. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her. Human eyes, alien eyes, compound eyes, heat-sensing pits. All of them focused on her dot. She stopped before the commandant and stood at attention. "Cadet Chun," Verthex began. "Your presence in the Predator Combat Division has created an administrative challenge." Alara kept her eyes forward. "Yes, Commandant. You were placed here by clerical error. A junior administrator transposed your assignment code. You were meant for medical support. I understand, Commandant. By all standard metrics, you should have failed." Verthex's compound eyes glittered. "You possess none of the physical characteristics we associate with apex predation. You cannot outrun the slowest crystal. You cannot overpower the weakest Vorak. Your natural weapons are, by galactic standards, non-existent." Alara said nothing. These were facts. She could not argue with facts. And yet, the Commandant continued, "Your unit achieved the highest survival rate in Academy history. Your tactical innovations have been incorporated into 4 different training modules. 3 species have formally requested that your methodologies be added to their military curricula." She paused, letting the words sink in. "During the Kethra incident, you led a group of recruits against a numerically superior enemy with better weapons and fortified positions. You lost 12 in the initial ambush. You lost 0 in your counterattack. 0, Cadet Chun. In the entire history of the Academy, no unit has ever achieved a 0-casualty offensive operation against a fortified enemy." The hall was completely silent. No one clicked. No one growled. No one breathed. "You taught Adhazari to use her acid for precision sabotage rather than direct assault," Verthex said. "You convinced Dvorak that patience was not cowardice. You made predators who had never known cooperation work as a seamless unit. You turned individual hunters into a pack." The Commandant stepped closer to Alara. Her ancient eyes studied the young human. The clerical error has been identified. You were meant for medical support. You can still transfer. You can complete your training in your originally assigned track. It would be the expected path. She paused. Do you wish to transfer? Alara thought about it. She thought about the easier path. The path she had originally chosen. She could be a medic. She could heal wounds and save lives from the safety of a medical bay. She would never have to fight again. Then she thought about Kethris, who had become her closest friend. She thought about Vethka, who still sat with her at meals. She thought about Zix, who had saved her life at least 4 times. She thought about Instructor Grathvalum, who had taught her more about strategy than any textbook ever could. She thought about the pack that had formed around her. The pack that trusted her. The pack that needed her. No, Commandant, Alara said. Her voice was steady. With respect, I believe I am where I am supposed to be. Vothek's mandibles spread in what Alara had learned to recognize as a smile. The Academy agrees, she said. Which is why we are creating something new. She turned to face the hall. The floating camera zoomed closer. Every screen across the galaxy showed the ancient Crickstill commander standing beside the small human girl. For 200 years, the galactic military has classified species according to their physical capabilities. Apex predators were placed in combat roles. Persistent species were placed in support roles. This system was efficient. It was logical. It was also incomplete. The Commandant gestured, and a holographic display appeared behind her. It showed the official species classification for humanity. Homo sapiens. Classification. Persistence class. Role. Endurance and support. Then the display changed. The old classification faded. New words appeared. Homo sapiens. Classification. Integration class. Role. Tactical coordination and pack synthesis. Special note. Do not underestimate. Subject species has conquered their death world through adaptability, creativity, and an apparently unlimited capacity for stubbornness. Recommend immediate assignment to multi-species units where their coordination abilities can be maximized. The hall erupted in noise. Clicks and growls and roars and sounds that humans had no names for. But it was not protest. It was approval. Verthex raised one claw for silence. Let the record show, she announced. Humanity is hereby reclassified. They are not the strongest species. They are not the fastest species. They are not the most dangerous species. She looked at Alara. They are the species that makes other predators better. They are force multipliers. They see potential that we do not see in ourselves. They find connections that we cannot find alone. The Commandant's voice rose. As of today, every multi-species combat unit in the galactic military will include at least one human coordinator. Every predator pack will have a human to guide them. Every hunter will have a human to help them find their prey. She turned back to Alara. Cadet Chun, you have proven that the greatest predator is not always the one with the sharpest claws. Sometimes the greatest predator is the one who can make all the claws work together. She reached out and pinned a new insignia to Alara's uniform. It was a symbol that had never existed before. A human hand, surrounded by the claws and fangs and spines of a dozen different species. You are the first integration class officer in galactic history. You will not be the last. The hall exploded with sound. Alara's classmates rushed forward. Kethris lifted her onto his shoulders, careful not to impale her on his spines. Vethka clicked her mandibles in joy. Zix buzzed around them in excited circles. Alara looked out at the chaos and felt tears in her eyes. 6 months ago, she had walked through the wrong door. She had been terrified. She had been alone. She had been certain that she would fail, Instead, she had found a family dot from his place in the crowd. Instructor Grathvalum watched the celebration. His wounds from Kethra had healed. His thorax still ached when it rained, but he did not mind. He had taught soldiers for 40 years. He had trained the deadliest predators in the galaxy, but he had never trained anyone like Ilara Chun Dodd. She was not a predator. She was something better. She was the one who made predators into a pack. Later, after the ceremony, Ilara found a quiet corner of the hall. She pulled out her communication device and connected to Earth. Her grandmother's face appeared on the screen, old and wrinkled and smiling. "I saw the broadcast," her grandmother said. "The whole planet saw it. You are famous now." Ilara laughed. "I did not mean to be famous." "No, you meant to heal people. But instead you taught monsters how to work together." Her grandmother's eyes twinkled. "That is very human of you, grandmother." "Yes?" Ilara looked back at the hall, where her pack was still celebrating. Predators from a dozen worlds, all of them deadly, all of them fierce, all of them her friends. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me about how humans survived on Earth. It saved my life." Her grandmother smiled. "We are stubborn creatures, Ilara. Too stubborn to die. Too stubborn to fail. And when we decide that someone is part of our pack, we never let them go." Ilara nodded. She understood now. Humans were not the apex predators. They never would be. But they were the ones who could turn any group into a pack, any collection of individuals into a team, any weakness into a strength. That was the human way. That was what made them dangerous. Not claws or fangs or venom. Just an unlimited capacity for stubbornness, and the ability to make everyone around them better. The clerical error was never corrected in the Academy system. Some errors, the administrators decided, were worth keeping. And across the galaxy, in military units and exploration teams and colony ships, humans began to find their true place. Not as support, not as predators, but as the glue that held everything together. The coordinators, the pack-makers. The miracle species. That made the impossible possible. All because one small girl walked through the wrong door and refused to give up.